From this perspective, we have an absolute obligation to change people's lives.
If they walk out the door with a bad final impression, that's going to be their lasting memory. That could be game over.
I'm speaking to a spin instructor, and they were saying the most important part of the playlist is the first and the last song.
Just make that final impression really strong and you just never know.
My name is Jack Thomas, one of the co-founders of The Fit Guide, which is the global standard of fitness excellence. Welcome to 5 Star Fitness Podcast. This is the show that's all about bringing the very best from hospitality into the fitness industry so we can have better, more profitable businesses and importantly help impact more people's lives. I'm joined today by Matt Lavender, co-founder of The Fit Guide, and today we are talking about the importance of first and last impressions. The first touch point you have in a member journey, the last touch point you have in a member journey. And let's start off with, I guess, the first impression. This would typically be a first timer into the gym. Why is that so important?
Well, I mean, I'm going to just throw something back at you for a second, Jack. So I'm going to ask you a question to start it off. Why, should you judge a book by its cover?
No.
Do people judge books by their cover?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, right. And I think that, we have to be realistic and accept that first impression is incredibly impactful. I think lots of different first impressions, both in traditional hospitality and in fitness. That first impression when you look on the website, but the first impression when you actually speak to a person, maybe when you call them for a reservation, if you do so, or to ask a question. There's the first impression when you sort of walk through the door and the first person that you speak to. And I think all of the experiments I've ever seen show that whilst we may think that we shouldn't make first impressions, people do. And I think what's more interesting, and I won't go into loads of detail on it, but it is that actually people's first impressions tend to be incredibly accurate. Not always, we get it wrong. Sometimes you meet someone and you don't like them and then you find out they're absolutely lovely, they were just having a bad day. So, of course we're talking about averages here, but people's first impressions are actually incredibly important. And I think that what happens if you start watching a Netflix series and the first part of it's just, you watch the first 10 minutes is rubbish?
Well, now especially, you can just hit that button, right?
Yeah, right.
Or YouTube, you can just hit back. So yeah, you'll skip it.
Right.
You'll jump out quickly in a way that you wouldn't have done 20 years ago when you only had 4 channels in the UK.
And I guess, most people probably continue with their journey during their trial class or whatever, that, they'll probably get through it. But often if you've made that a bad first impression to start with, you've maybe already set the future of whether they're going to return or not. I think, the thing with first impressions, you do have time to recover. You can, if just because it doesn't go well, but you're basically it's an uphill battle from there, isn't it? And you've got to really work hard, because I think ultimately people do tend to make very quick decisions based on that first impression. So we can talk about the specifics of that first impression and what that involves, but I don't know if you've got something to add on that.
Well, I don't think we've mentioned this on this podcast, but you have a psychology background, right?
I do, yeah.
I don't think we've talked about that before. Yeah,
right.
So it's not just hospitality, you kind of infused that with psychology. Was it a master's degree?
I did a master's degree in psychology, quite broad, so I wouldn't say I'm an expert on anything in particular, but I do have, there are certain areas of psychology I'm really interested in. Organizational psychology, evolutionary psychology to some degree as well. And so, I try and infuse ideas from that into the sort of training that I do.
So getting your input on hospitality has been fascinating, but also the psychology angle has been really interesting for me as well. I know you're very well read on this subject. You hear these sort of stats, people make their mind up in the first, I don't know what it is, 3 seconds, I think,
right.
30 seconds, whatever it might be. And as someone who does a lot of interviews for, the gym I run and obviously for the Fit Guide as well, you do get a sense for how important that is. Do you have any sort of particular stats? Is it true?
I do actually. Thanks for asking. I'll try and do it quick, but I'll just say as well, I may have the exact numbers a little bit wrong, and I don't know who did the study, but I read one study which I found fascinating, which was that it's called thin slicing, and it's this idea that we're able to make very accurate decisions very quickly. And they did 2 experiments where in the first one they had people watch 10 seconds of a lecture, or a short video anyway, of a lecture, but no sound, nothing. All they could do is watch it. And then they had to try and guess how competent that lecturer was. They had to grade them based on nothing, just their body language, no sound. And then they had another group of people that actually studied with those same lecturers that featured on the video for a whole semester, and they were able to grade them on their competence after a whole semester. What they found is that the two scores correlated really, really well. So based on just 10 seconds of information, people were able to gauge how competent these people were. So it just goes to show first impressions are actually very accurate and very powerful.
Interesting. So what can we do, I guess, as gym owners, operators, coaches, instructors, to make sure that the first impression is good?
So just from the second anybody walks in the door, just make sure that you're giving it your all. So acknowledge them, even if you're busy, even if it's just looking up, making eye contact. I've seen you. People talk about waiting, and it happens in hotels. You might have to wait to check in, whatever. But what the best hotels do is they make sure that at the very least, someone's made eye contact with you. They've looked up. They've said, "I'll be with you in a minute." People just want to be seen. They want to be acknowledged. They often have these people. I think they call them like lobby lizards or something, and they walk around and they just greet the people in the queue. They're not check-in people. They can't do the check-in, but they can just make sure everyone's okay, maybe give them a glass of water, say, "Yeah, look, we'll be with you in just a moment." So there's that first thing. And then the very first thing that you say to a guest, client, member is going to be remembered. You have a lot of responsibility with that first thing. So I always say, when someone walks in, welcome them, specifically welcome them, and use the name of the establishment. I'm saying establishment because it applies to everything. So, if they're coming into your gym, Jack, welcome to base. Use base, use that name. It creates that sense of place. It's like you're not just walking into a building, you're walking into a brand now. So by using that and actually saying that, it's really impactful.
Gives an air of professionalism as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Look at what happens when you go into a restaurant in Japan or a Japanese restaurant, and everybody stands up and they greet you, don't they, immediately? Yeah. Because they know the importance of a great first impression.
Really good example. Would you class the first impression the first time they visit a gym, or is every single time someone visits, is there a first impression opportunity?
Well, and I think the most important one is the first time you walk in, because then you've already kind of got it, so you sort of know. But yeah, every time you go in is another mini first impression. It's a first impression of that day, that visit, isn't it?
And maybe that member of staff. Yeah. So as you were talking through that, it made me think of a restaurant I go to regularly. And so I was at the counter, and it's very busy. There's a lot of activity there. And I'm stood there waiting to be served. And they're all busy and they're running around. And she's there and she's counting some money. And then she's running off somewhere else. And I'm like, has she even seen me? I mean, I'm literally right in front of her, but I'm like, I'm not 100% sure she's seen me or not. And all it would take is just looking up and a little smile, "I'll be with you in a moment." And I'd be absolutely fine to wait, but it's just this lack of acknowledgement. And I'm like, and I don't know whether to say like, "Hey, by the way, I'm here," because she can obviously see me, I'm right in front of her. And it's just such a small, such a simple thing to just acknowledge someone's there, make eye contact and smile. And as soon as they do that, you feel fine, you feel great, and you're happy to wait, a minute or two.
Just think, as I say, it really sets the tone for that journey, doesn't it? I know from some of the practice evaluations that we did, the places where you walked in and you just felt, we've not, they've not acknowledged me. And then when you do get to the desk and, "Oh yeah, checking in, okay, you're on station number 4, or name, and it's just, it takes a lot, even for me as somebody who's objective and tries to assess every interaction on its own merit. I'm already in a bad frame of mind. I've already decided, oh God, is it going to be one of these places? And that's me.
It sets the tone, doesn't it?
What's it like for somebody who isn't looking at it objectively? They've probably made their mind up, and that's it.
I think as well, and I've talked about this a lot with all of the instructors I've worked with and coaches, just the importance of that first visit. And there's two ways to look at that. One is from a business perspective. So yeah, if you're like, name, okay, starts in 5 minutes or whatever, and that's it. Am I going to come back to that? Am I going to sign up as a member? Am I going to recommend that to my friends? Like, absolutely not. And then I think in the fitness industry, we have an even deeper obligation to people who might have been really nervous about joining the gym. They might have been thinking about it for years. They know they need to do it. They want to get healthier, and they're really nervous. And they come in, and they've got a very cold response. They don't really quite know what's coming up next. They don't really know their way around the space. They don't really feel welcome at all. They don't really feel like perhaps they belong there. And you might actually really disrupt the first step that they've made into improving their lives. And I really think that's just like a travesty that we would let that happen. On the flip side, if we get to know them a little bit, have you done much training like this before? You haven't, don't worry, we'll look after you. I'll introduce you to Matt. He's going to take good care of you. You're going to be absolutely fine. That person then is like, wow, this feels good. I feel welcome. I feel like I'm going to be looked after. This person understands me. So I really feel like we have this deeper obligation in the fitness industry. And I think it's such a shame when we don't do these things well. And to be frank, we have seen that there is a lot of improvement in this area, right?
I think that's so interesting. But, I think it goes to show that actually in the fitness industry, it's almost more important to make that first impression, because it's not just about sort of, putting them, it's also, like you say, it's that responsibility, isn't it? Like, imagine if somebody really, they plucked up the courage to finally to get there and to sort of try and to get fit, and then they walk in, they just think this just isn't, it's not for me, like I'm not going to be welcomed and people are just going to think I'm this or that, and so they don't do it. So just you have a sort of a really deep responsibility certainly for those types of people.
It reminds me of some consultancy work I did, and we were talking about the sales process and why sales are so important and the importance of connection on the first visit. And I said, right, tell me about someone whose life you've changed at this gym. And he said, I think his name was Raul, and he was very overweight. Doctor said that he would have serious health issues. There would be serious long-term implications if he didn't lose some weight. And they inspired him. They had him coming regularly. They helped him with his nutrition. And they changed his life. I think he lost 50 kg, something like that. He was in good health, and they probably extended many years onto his life, more time with his family and everything else. We said, what would have happened if you hadn't given him a great first-time visit, really made him feel welcome, really made him feel comfortable? If you hadn't helped him after the session, and getting into another area here, but helped him find the right package for him and help him continue his training. And you could see it really connected with the people in the room. It really like, wow, yeah, God, if we hadn't done that, if we hadn't done a great job with Raul when he came in, how many other Rauls have come in to start, and maybe we haven't done our best, we haven't been in a good mood, or the part-time staff that didn't care was on the front desk. And I really want the fitness industry to look at it from this perspective and these goggles. We have an absolute obligation to change people's lives. That's usually why we've got into the fitness industry. Let's really make sure that we're doing that. And as managers, as gym owners, let's make sure that all our staff are on board with that. Let's skip to the final impression. I don't think that's talked about as much, right? We hear about the first impression. What about the final impression in a visit or a journey?
Yeah, I mean, I said it earlier, but I mean, I suppose one thing with the first impression is that you can recover from it in theory. It might take a lot of work, but you can do. But that final impression, if somebody leaves if they walk out the door with a bad final impression, it can override everything else that's happened before it, even if it was really positive. But B, it's just really hard to recover from, right? Because that's going to be their lasting memory. And, in the hotel side, we would say if someone walks out with a final impression, that's going up on like TripAdvisor or Booking.com or wherever else people put their reviews. Potentially, if you haven't sort of dealt with feedback or made sure that something was resolved. And so, I mean, they're both important. As I say, first is hard to recover from, but you can. But final, often, that could be it. That could be game over. If you make a really bad final impression, that's the lasting memory someone walks out of a gym with. They just might not be back, and that's it.
What I find really interesting is actually a really bad final impression. If it's maybe to the point of being rude, people will give you a 1-star review. And they'll sometimes say, had a really good session, really enjoyed it, but the front desk staff was so rude when I left, it's an absolute disgrace and I'm never going back. 1 star.
Right.
So everybody can see that. And that's how much impact it can have. They don't care that it was a good class and that everything else was good.
You almost forget. They almost rewrite what happened before in their brain. Again, if you wanted to get into psychology, there's like recency bias where we're more likely to remember things that come more recent. There's also the fact that our memories are actually quite malleable by things that happen afterwards. So you could almost start to remember things that weren't actually that bad that happened before as bad because you just experienced something bad. So actually, maybe the class wasn't that good, because you've had a bad final impression. So I can't stress enough how important it is.
And of course, that can be the other way around. So let's say the class was okay, not bad, but wow, I got welcomed in such a wonderful way. And then on the way out, Matt really said, "Oh, how was the class? Did you enjoy it? Would love to see you back back here, and it can completely be flipped the other way, and then it can make up for a few failings or shortcomings in the rest of the experience.
Absolutely, and I think it is important to say that as well. You know, it's avoiding a bad final impression, but it's more importantly, it's creating a really good one, because, as you say, maybe things didn't go perfectly before, but you send them off really happy, maybe with a little, you know, complimentary pair of grip socks or something, you know, whatever it is, and just that's going to be their lasting memory, and they'll probably forgive you. People are people are fairly forgiving as well if things haven't gone perfectly, but you kind of round it off really nicely. I think that could still leave a positive impression.
Absolutely. A couple of quick fitness industry stories. So one, just I think really hammers this point home. Speaking to a spin instructor, cycling instructor, and they were saying the most important part of the playlist is the first and the last song.
There you go.
And so they really think and focus on that because they want to start in a really good way and something that builds up the tempo and gets them setting the right tone for the class. And that last one, let's have something really pumping, send them off on the right note. So the rest of the songs they said they don't bother much about. They said they'll even recycle playlists and they'll only change the first and the last, but those are the ones that really have people leaving thinking, wow, that was incredible. So that's one. The second one was a personal experience. So when I went to New York, this is many years ago, there was a brand that I really liked, really admired. I've been watching it online, was really looking forward to doing the session. Went with my girlfriend at the time, now wife. And when we walked through the door, there was someone eating sushi on the front door. You could smell it. They didn't make eye contact. I think they just said, okay, sign your name there. And that was pretty much it. Didn't show us around the space, didn't introduce us to the coaches. The coaches, there were two of them, did a fantastic job, like really exceptional. The Fit Guide, of course, hadn't been born yet, but I'm sure the class experience would have scored 5 stars. On the way out, rude, cold, didn't say anything to us at all. And it was interesting, like as I walked out the door, and again, this is, of course, before the Fit Guide, but I was still analysing it from a fitness industry perspective, and I just couldn't help but feel a little bit let down by the experience. You know, I'd seen so much online. Their socials have been so good. You know, the vibe, the brand, the personality, the copy that was used. I'd bought into it so much. I just couldn't help but feel let down. And to be honest, it wouldn't have taken much. I would say they were fairly rude. You know, probably didn't make eye contact once. But if they'd just been a notch up, just been okay or average, I think everything would have been fine. But they really dragged the whole thing down. And again, it was a real shame for the coaches who obviously gave 100% and put so much into it.
Yeah, really interesting. I'll give you a very quick one from hospitality. It was a particular hotel that I was saying that obviously will go unnamed, but I checked out the hotel, I had my luggage collected, went to check out. They told me that my luggage was in the taxi waiting outside. Got in the taxi, got to the airport, opened the boot, no luggage. Now, I could go into the technical reasons why they made a mistake there, because you should always confirm that luggage is in the boot before you let the car go off. That could have been a terrible final impression, right? But just as I was about to start to panic, a car pulled up behind, and there was the GM in his own car with my luggage in the back, and I apologised profusely, and he recovered it. You know, you can recover. You know, and I think that's a sort of really important lesson. You know, don't think, oh, well, we've lost this one because all sorts of things went wrong. Just make that final impression really strong, and you just never know.
That reminds me, it resonates with me because I think we need to add that in a future episode for sure. Right. How to turn around a bad
service
situation.
Recovery, they call it.
Service
That's
recovery. Okay, it has a hospitality term.
It does.
And I'm big on that base as well, because you can actually turn someone who's complaining into a raving fan. We will get onto that in a future episode. If this episode has resonated with you, if you think that we need to infuse more hospitality into the fitness industry to make it better, to make it like hotels and restaurants and the great industries they've built, then do subscribe to this podcast, this YouTube channel. For now, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for watching.